5 million points, what is this concept? You must know that in the core palace, the price of a most common 8th level spiritual core is 800,000 points, and a bottle of the most common 7th level imperial healing potion is in the price range of 1 million and 5 million points. Add a few more, and you can even buy a bottle of 8th level low-grade emperor level elixir. Although the effect of this longevity fruit is powerful, it must be prepared into a spiritual elixir. As for the 8th level emperor level elixir, not to mention that the prescription is difficult to find, the success rate of preparation is also extremely low. An 8th level elixir emperor, the master may not be able to prepare it in one go. Once it fails, many other materials will have to be used. Therefore, in the minds of many people, a simple longevity fruit, which is equivalent to a bottle of 7th level healing potion, is not worth 5 million points at all, so no one buys it. At such a sky-high price, Jason couldn't help but take a breath of air. Although he had 8 million points, they were all intended to be used to purchase the materials for the 9 spirits chi gathering formation. Even though he still had too many points. The Yu-Ji sword and the 10,000 wood emperor staff are, after all, Earth-level high-grade spiritual weapons. If they can avoid selling them, Jason doesn't want to sell them. Although he can't use them himself, when the time comes, they can be used by his disciples Luo-kun and the others. Better than selling directly. If he had taken out 5 million points directly, then he, who had only 3 million points left, would have to raise another 7 million points. However, he only had 2 bottles of 7th level imperial elixirs plundered from others. As a result, the materials of the 9 spirits chi gathering formation were somewhat difficult to support, and he had to sell other things, which he was not willing to do. For Jason, spiritual elixirs were nothing and he was willing to sell them, but he also needed to collect spiritual weapons and some rare materials. "Sir, I'm afraid this price is a bit expensive, isn't it?" Jason, who was so frightened by the other party's price that he almost couldn't swallow his breath, frowned and said, "A bit expensive?" The other party raised his head and glanced at Jason lightly, and said, 5 million points are not expensive at all. You know, this is an 8th level longevity fruit. Although it is only an 8th level material, even if you search the entire continent, you may not be able to find the second one. If I hadn't urgently needed the points, I wouldn't have sold it. If it were you, if there was such a longevity fruit, you would be willing to part with it. Sell it? Listening to what the other party said, Jason couldn't help but nod in his heart. Although the other party's words didn't sound good, they were very reasonable. For an elixir master, rare elixir materials are always needed. He treasures it and is reluctant to sell it, even if it is of no use to him for the time being. And to be honest, although the price of the other party is expensive, it is not a random price. You must know that the exchange points for the 7th level cloud and mist fruit in the elixir tower is 500,000. This longevity fruit is of the 8th level after all. The materials are also worth millions of points. The most important thing is the materials for preparing the longevity potion. Each of them is extremely rare. When Jason got Tai Sui wood, although he knew that it was the main material for preparing the longevity potion, he never touched it at all. The idea is that the other 2 materials, especially the longevity fruit, are hard to find. Now that Jason has met him in the trading hall on the 2nd floor, if he misses him again, even Jason himself will not forgive himself. You can earn points, but this longevity fruit is hard to find. If you miss it this time, you may not know if you want to encounter it again next time. It will be the year of the monkey and the moon of the horse. And for other people's elixirs, buying the longevity fruit is at best a rare 8th level elixir material, or the effect of a bottle of 7th level healing potion. It is not worth 5 million, but for Jason, it can. For the longevity potion prepared, 5 million points is nothing at all. Although Jason thought about it for a long time, it only happened in a moment. Within a few breaths, Jason had made up his mind and immediately said, "Okay, 5 million points, this longevity fruit." I want it. After Jason finished speaking, he was going to take the token from his body and give points to the other party. At this moment, a palm suddenly stretched out from behind Jason, and then grabbed the jade containing the longevity fruit. With the box in his hand, a soft and strange voice sounded in the hall. "This longevity fruit, I want it." Such a sudden move immediately silenced the entire hall. Everyone turned their eyes to the person who made the move. When they saw the person's face, the faces of some of the disciples present became a little excited, and then they looked at Jason with eyes full of sympathy. On the side, Carrie, who had been following Jason, also looked behind Jason. After seeing who it was, his face instantly turned pale. Jason turned his head and focused his gaze on the person behind him. He was a young man with short blonde hair, blue pupils, extremely fair complexion, and a bright red lip under his tall nose. In a woman, she must have the beauty that will captivate the whole country, but as a man, this young man looks extremely monstrous. "Your Excellency, it seems a little against the rules for you to take action like this, right? This longevity fruit is what I only fancy, and I already want it." Looking at the other party, accepting the coldness in my heart, I looked at the other party with cold eyes. "Irregular? Hey. The strange young man suddenly laughed. "Little handsome boy, you probably don't know who I am and dare to talk to me like this, but that's okay. This is the Jubao Pavilion. I am a person who knows the rules, Brother Xiaobei. Heath Ledger happens to need this longevity fruit, so why not give it to me and save you 5 million points? You know, 5 million points is not a small amount." Although Heath Ledger's words seemed polite, his tone left no room for discussion. Hearing Heath Ledger's words, many people in the hall shot Jason a look, the most of which showed sympathy, while the corners of Azeroth's mouth were filled with gloating sneer. Opposite him, Jason's face suddenly darkened. He could feel the dangerous aura emanating from the other party, but Jason couldn't tolerate the other party's attempt to snatch the longevity fruit from his hands. Seeing Jason's gloomy gaze, beads of sweat suddenly appeared on Carrie's forehead, and he hurriedly transmitted the message to Jason's ears. "Brother Jason, this brother Heath Ledger is ranked on the list of elixirs. The 9th existence, the 8th level intermediate emperor, spiritual master. You must not be impulsive." "I'm sorry, I just need this longevity fruit." Jason ignored Carrie's words and said lightly, grabbed the jade box in his opponent's right hand, took out his token at the same time, and handed it to the owner of the stall. After Jason's words fell, the disciples in the entire hall were slightly shocked. They never thought that this young man, who was a 7th-level intermediate emperor spiritual master, would dare to reject Heath Ledger's request so directly. Although Jason has become very famous in the core hall recently, these monsters who only work hard have rarely heard of Jason's reputation. Even if someone knows Jason is the strongest. His record was only to defeat Puskin. Although Puskin was strong for ordinary disciples, he was only ranked 49th on the elixir list. Compared with Heath Ledger, he was simply a world away. The differences between Cloud and Mud are not on the same level at all. Seeing that Jason dared to reject him, Heath Ledger's demonic face could not help but stiffen slightly, and then there was a cold meaning in his eyes. "Boy, do you know who you are talking to? Obediently deliver the longevity fruit to my hand. I won't argue with you, otherwise." Heath Ledger spread his palms out with a sneer on his face. Jason ignored Heath Ledger's sneer. Instead, he turned his attention to the stall owner selling longevity fruit and said, "What? Your Excellency, are you still not collecting points?" The stall owner listened. After hearing Jason's words, he couldn't help but hesitate and whispered, "Brother, do you really want this longevity fruit? This Heath Ledger is in the top 10 of the elixir list. Compared with the longevity fruit, it is still his own. Life is important." The stall owner thought that Jason didn't know the other person's identity, so he reminded him kindly. "Thank you for your concern, but this longevity fruit is very important to me. No one can take it away from me today. Please transfer the money." Seeing Jason's insistence, the stall owner looked at Jason Sen's eyes, held a hint of admiration and a hint of sympathy, but the movements of his hands did not stop. He directly swiped 5 million points from Jason's token into his own token, and then transferred the token, gave it back to Jason. Jason took the token and with a flash of light in his left hand, he stored the token and the longevity fruit into the space ring without even looking at Heath Ledger's open right hand. Okay, very good. Heath Ledger said coldly, looking at Jason with a cold gaze. As his words fell, Jason suddenly felt an astonishing aura coming from the other person's body. The muscles all over his body tightened involuntarily. Chills stood on end all over his body. A feeling of extreme danger suddenly emerged from his heart. Rise up. Jason's eyes suddenly condensed, a sense of crisis emerged in his heart, and the blood in his body boiled. The other party gave him the feeling that he was being stared at by a huge patterned python, which made Jason uncontrollably afraid. Boy, you are looking for death. Heath Ledger said coldly, a terrifying spiritual power condensed in his right hand, exuding astonishing pressure. What's going on? Does it seem very lively here? At this moment, suddenly, a faint, crisp sound like a pleasant bell sounded at the door of the trading hall on the second floor. However, under this sound, in the entire trading hall, except for Jason, everyone's expressions suddenly changed. Even Heath Ledger, who was previously arrogant, suddenly calmed down, with a slight hint of panic on his face. At the door of the trading hall on the second floor, a beautiful woman wearing a simple light blue robe was looking at where Jason and the others were, her face calm and without any expression. This is a woman about 20 years old, with a full head of black hair tied into a phoenix shape, hanging on the back of her head. She has a beautiful appearance, exquisite facial features, and looks extremely elegant. At first glance, she looks like a tree in the early morning. The orchids in the empty valley, reflected by the sunshine and morning dew, give people a sense of elegance and purity. Her face was calm, and her eyes were like icebergs that would never melt. There was no fluctuation at all, but she didn't feel cold at all. She was just elegant, as if she was isolated from the world. However, all the people looking at her in the hall, behind her, but they all broke out in cold sweat involuntarily. The beautiful woman walked slowly into the hall. Wherever she went, all the disciples along the way gave in. These strong men, who were monsters in the eyes of ordinary disciples, were like mice in front of this woman, retreated one after another for fear of getting into trouble. What is going on here? Heath Ledger, I saw that you seemed to want to take action in this trading hall earlier. The beautiful woman slowly came between Jason and Heath Ledger, and glanced at him with her smart eyes. The two of them couldn't help but feel a hint of coldness in their eyes as they looked at Heath Ledger. How is it possible? No misunderstanding, Senior Sister Lanyuigusan, this must be a misunderstanding. Heath Ledger, who had a fierce face before and with spiritual power rising in his body, could not help but have a trace of nervousness on his face at this moment. He struggled to squeeze out a smile and said hurriedly, Senior Sister Lanyuigusan, there was nothing here just now, but Junior Brother Huolong just sold an 8th level longevity fruit. Everyone was curious, so they gathered here. Together, haha, it was an unintentional mistake to disturb the trading floor. Really? Lanyuigusan took a step forward and came to Jason. She pressed close to Jason, staring at Jason with her quiet eyes, with a hint of inquiry. Lanyuigusan's gaze seemed to have magic power. The moment she stared at her, the green ball in Jason's mind suddenly spun faster, and a unique wood spiritual power was injected into Jason's body. In an instant, Jason felt an inexplicable aura from the beautiful woman opposite, which made his mind wander. What's going on? Jason was suddenly startled, and his consciousness suddenly returned to consciousness. The strange situation of the cyan ball in his mind made him unable to help being shocked. However, there was no expression on Jason's face, and he acted extremely calm, because he found that the other party had not released any spiritual power or mental fluctuations before. All of these were the autonomous reactions of the cyan ball, which made Jason can't help but wonder. It's nothing. Everyone was interested in a longevity fruit before, and now the deal has been completed. Although he was shocked, Jason still calmed down and spoke calmly. Judging from the performance of everyone present and the somewhat frightened look of Heath Ledger, Jason saw that the other party was not simple, but now that he had obtained the longevity fruit, Jason did not intend to continue to argue. As for Heath Ledger, it would be okay if the other party obediently did not mess with him. No matter where he is on the elixir list, Jason will make the other party regret messing with him. Although he is only a 7th level intermediate imperial spiritual master, he is on the same level as these monsters in the top 10 on the elixir list. It's a long way off, but Jason believes that if he really takes action, he will fight to the death with his own strength, take the spiritual potion, use the god-destroying technique with 7 times the combat power, plus his 7th level emperor, the fusion of super spiritual power and black weird power, the wrath of God. Jason believes that even if those monsters ranked in the top 10 of the elixir list can defeat him, it will definitely be an extremely tragic victory. At the same time, Jason's heart was once again filled with the desire for power. Although he was no longer considered weak in the core palace, what he saw in the second floor trading hall today still made him feel that his strength was not enough. Since it's nothing, that's fine. I think everyone knows the rules of the second floor trading floor. I don't want to say anything more. If I find something that goes against the rules, I don't mind letting him think about it. I will stay in the palace for a year and a half. The Qingli woman said indifferently, and looked at Heath Ledger coldly, but it scared Heath Ledger into a cold sweat. After saying all this, the beautiful woman stopped talking and started walking slowly in front of the stalls in the trading hall. The originally tense hall immediately became quiet at this moment. Heath Ledger glanced at Jason fiercely, his eyes full of coldness, but he didn't even dare to say a harsh word and walked away. Because of the appearance of this beautiful woman, the entire hall returned to calm. It was even more peaceful than when Jason first entered the hall. Everyone was cautious, asking and trading items, and their words were full of caution. Looking at the figure of the beautiful woman in the hall, Jason's eyes flickered slightly, and then he asked Carrie at the side, "Carrie, who is this Blue Moon Gusen?" "Her?" Besides Sen, Carrie couldn't help but shuddered. "Brother Jason, you don't know, senior sister Lanui Gusen is ranked number 1 on the list of elixirs in our core palace." Ranked number 1. After hearing what Carrie said, no matter how steady and calm Jason was, he couldn't help but be surprised. Coming to the back of the core hall, especially in the trading hall on the second floor, Jason saw many monsters. Many of them gave him a feeling of extreme danger. There was strong pressure dissipating in every move. Jason had also imagined what kind of evildoer the core disciple ranked first on the list of elixirs was, but he never expected that the number 1 on the list of elixirs was such a delicate woman. It was very different from Jason's imagination. "Shoo!" Hearing Jason's surprised voice, Carrie's face suddenly turned pale. He secretly glanced at the Blue Moon Gusen in the distance and found that the other party didn't pay attention here, so he whispered, "Senior brother Jason, you don't know, senior sister Lanui Gusen is the number 1 expert in our core hall. Her ranking on the elixir list often changes, but her number 1 position has never changed hands. Many senior brothers have I want to take away her number 1 position, but I have never succeeded in all these years." "No, how old is this Lanui Gusen?" Jason opened his mouth in shock, not believing it in his heart. On the surface, Blue Moon Ancient Sen looks like he is about 20 years old, maybe in his early 20s at most. A few years ago, Blue Moon Ancient Sen was only that old. But according to what Carrie said, Blue Moon Ancient Sen has already occupied the first place in the list of elixirs. Position for several years? How is this possible? Seeing the astonishment on Jason's face, Carrie couldn't help but smile bitterly. "Brother Jason, I know this sounds incredible, but the fact is, at least I became a core disciple 5 years ago. From the moment I joined the core hall, senior sister Lanui Gusen was already the number 1 master on the elixir list." In the hall, the corner of Jason's mouth couldn't help but twitch twice. He boasted that he had seen many geniuses and masters, and he himself was not mediocre. but now that he saw this blue moon goosen, he finally knew, what is the vast world, full of wonders. Is it possible that this Lanui goosen looks young, but is actually very old? Impossible. From my perspective, it should be impossible to see it wrong, right? Looking at the Lanui goosen from a distance, Jason couldn't help but mutter in his heart. Now, he can only think of such a possibility. With Jason's eyes, he can naturally see that the people in the second-floor hall are, although these monsters all look like young people, in fact, except for a small number of people like myself, most of them are not young, and most of them are in their 20s and 30s. Some of those who look mature may be older. Because among the core disciples present, the weakest ones are all masters at the level of 8th level Emperor spiritual masters. When their strength reaches this level, they naturally have the ability to consolidate their youth, and they can become core disciples for a few years, or even longer. It's been decades. In fact, he is not young, maybe how old he is. This junior brother, senior sister Lanui goosen, is definitely not what you imagined. Just as Jason was muttering in his heart, a hoarse voice suddenly came from the side. It was the person who had sold the longevity fruit to Jason. The man in gray. Oh? Jason couldn't help but glance at the other person in surprise. Do you know what I'm thinking? The man in gray couldn't help but smile, but the smile revealed on his cold face was worse than crying. Ugly, this junior brother, I don't know his surname, he doesn't even know senior sister Lanui goosen, and he dares to offend Heath Ledger. I guess he must have become a core disciple not long ago. I am Huolong. I naturally know what my junior brother is thinking. I think the junior brother is doubting the age of senior sister Lanui goosen. To be honest, as long as he has met senior sister Lanui goosen, no one is not surprised. This Huolong is also an unruly disciple, and there are also some among the core disciples. He has a great reputation, but Jason dared to offend Heath Ledger, who was ranked number 1 on the elixir list, which made him have a slight affection for Jason. Even if he were Jason, he might not be here. The occasion blatantly offended Heath Ledger. Oh, it turns out to be senior brother Huolong. I'm Jason. I don't know why senior brother said this. Jason smiled and spoke out of curiosity. Jason? What, it turns out you are that Jason, no wonder, haha, my junior brother's name is very well known to me, senior brother. They all say you are arrogant. Today, I saw that you are indeed well-deserved. After hearing Jason's name, Huolong couldn't help but be surprised. In the second-floor trading hall, he had heard someone say something about a new core disciple named Jason who had just transferred Puskin and Gamma. The blow caused serious injuries, all the meridians in his body were broken, and he was extremely arrogant. Previously, Huolong didn't pay too much attention to it. Now after hearing Jason introduce himself, he remembered again that others said that this newcomer was very arrogant. Looking back on the previous scene, it was really so. Arrogant to the core. With the power of a 7th-level intermediate imperial spiritual master, he can actually fight against a master of the elixir list like Puskin, and a low-level 8th-level imperial spiritual master. It seems that this Jason is really a monster. No wonder he is so crazy. Proud. But also, if Jason wasn't so amazingly powerful, Carrie, the caretaker of the second-floor trading hall as a 7th-level senior imperial spiritual master, wouldn't be so dedicated to introducing and serving him. After thinking about it in his heart, Huolong's expression did not change. He squeezed out a smile again and said, Junior brother Jason, I think you don't know the origin of senior sister Lanui goosen. In fact, the reason why we are facing each other is she is so awe-inspiring, and her strength is only part of it. Senior sister Lanui goosen is also extremely amazing in her knowledge of elixirs. Of course, the most important thing is that it is a rumor at this point. Huolong's voice suddenly dropped a lot. The voice transmission said, it is rumored that senior sister Lanui goosen is the disciple of the supreme tower master of our elixir master tower. What? The disciple of the tower master? Jason was really surprised. After joining the Elixir Master Tower, he had also inquired about everything about the Spiritual Medicine Master Tower, and naturally knew that in the Spiritual Medicine Master Tower, the 4 elders and the 10 hall masters who were in charge were the real decision-makers. As for the 2 deputy tower masters and the legendary tower master, there were very few. He almost never appeared in front of his disciples, focusing on cultivating in secret. Yes. Huolong nodded. Junior brother Jason, you don't know that it has been exactly 10 years since senior sister Lan Yuigusan became a core disciple. When she first joined the Spirit Medicine Master Tower, she was just a little girl in her teens, but she can go anywhere. The elders and palace masters are very concerned about her. Once there are any resources in our core palace, they will be given to her first. Despite this, in the first 2 years, no one in our core palace paid attention to her. She, because of her ranking on the elixir list, never participated. The turning point of things happened 8 years ago. At that time, a disciple who ranked in the 30s on the elixir list accidentally had a conflict with her, saying that she didn't know whose child is this. He became a core disciple just because of his connections, but he took up everyone's resources, and every time he benefited more than others. That year, senior sister Lan Yuigusan participated in the ranking contest on the elixir list. In the competition, she was the first to challenge this disciple, which attracted a lot of people's attention. On the ring, this disciple, who ranked in the 30s on the elixir list, was seriously injured by her blow. The defeat shocked everyone. In that year, senior sister Lan Yuigusan fought hard all the way, and finally reached the top of the elixir list and sat on the throne of laurels. She sat on the throne for 8 full years. At the beginning, there were still people who challenged her in the elixir ranking competition, but she was defeated every time. In recent years, no one has challenged her. And what you don't know is that Lan Yu, the real scary thing about senior sister Gusan is not this. What scares her is that no matter who conflicts with her, no matter who is right or wrong, senior sister Lan Yuigusan will definitely not be punished, and the guy who offends her, but he would be severely punished by the core hall, imprisoned in solitary confinement, and go to the Hall of Thoughts to think about his mistakes. It was really a childish thing. Later, a strong man on the elixir list got some gossip from an elder, saying senior sister Lan Yuigusan turned out to be the elixir master who was personally brought into the tower by our legendary tower master, and a person who entered the core hall was his direct disciple. Since this news came out, there has been no more people in our core hall. I dare to offend her. Speaking of this, Huolong glanced at Lan Yuigusan in the distance, cautiously, for fear of being heard by the other party. His actions were as obscene as they were. He really couldn't imagine that it was someone like him who was on the elixir list. It takes a strong person to do it. Is he so monster? Looking at the back of Lan Yuigusan in the distance, Jason couldn't help but sigh in his heart. What kind of strength and demeanor is it that can make so many monsters in the core hall dare not challenge him? After a brief chat with Huolong, Jason, led by Carrie, also came to a corner of the trading floor and began to set up a stall. However, the stall he set up was not a sales stall, but a sales stall. It is an acquisition stall. Although he only has 3 million points left on him, he still has 2 bottles of 7th level Imperial elixirs, which are worth 3 to 4 million points at a discount. In the core palace, an 8th level primary spiritual core costs 800,000 points. In this trading hall, it is naturally not more expensive than in the core palace. It is about 700,000 points, and 9 spiritual cores are just over 6 million points. The purpose of Jason naturally, the chi formation would not return empty-handed. As a last resort, Jason had no choice but to take out the Taiyue sword and sell it. Jason planned to leave the 10,000 wood Emperor scepter to Luo Kuan, so he would not take it out. In addition to purchasing 9 8th level wood spiritual cores, Jason also wrote down some other materials for building the 9 spirits chi gathering formation in the purchased items. The prices here are generally lower than those in the core hall. If you can get it here after redeeming it, Jason naturally didn't want to make another trip to the core hall. What Jason didn't expect was that, not long after he had just set up his stall, Lan Yu Gusen, who had been watching not far away, came to him. After seeing the purchase of 9 and 8 coins written by Jason, after the spiritual core of the stepwood system and those materials, an inexplicable light suddenly lit up in the eyes of Lan Yu Gusen. This gaze was filled with extremely unexpected shock, as if she had seen something unbelievable, something that should not have appeared here. It was a kind of shock and horror that penetrated deep into her soul, and even her body was uncomfortable. He trembled slightly involuntarily. However, this change only occurred in the blink of an eye. After an instant, Lan Yu Gusen returned to normal, and his eyes were as calm as ever. But who is Jason? With his status as the founder of Ling Ling Pharmacy, Lan Yu Gusen will naturally, this change was clearly imprinted in my mind. A trace of doubt also appeared in Jason's mind involuntarily. You want to buy these things? 9 8th level wood-type spiritual cores? There shouldn't be any spiritual potion that requires so many wood-type spiritual cores. And even if you want to prevent the preparation from failing, I'm afraid you don't have to buy it all at once. Want to buy 9 identical spiritual cores? In front of the stall, Lan Yu Gusen looked at Jason deeply and spoke calmly. Although Lan Yu Gusen's words were extremely calm, Jason felt a strange sense of inexplicable tension in Lan Yu Gusen's voice, whether it was an illusion or not. Nervous? Jason was confused. He didn't understand why he felt like this, but he said, Senior Sister Lan Yu Gusen, I want to buy these 9 8th level wood spiritual cores. They are naturally useful. As for where to use it, it's not convenient to say. Really? What if I have to tell you? I don't have the materials you want. As long as you tell me the use, how about I sell it to you? Lan Yu Gusen couldn't help but reveal a faint smile when he looked at Jason's face. Under his pink and rosy lips, his white teeth were exposed, his eyebrows were slightly raised, and his always calm eyes were rippling like autumn water, exuding an unforgettable feeling. Resist the charm. Not far away, some core disciples who had been paying attention to Lan Yu Gusen's movements were suddenly stunned. Their eyes looking at Jason were full of jealousy and resentment. They had known Senior Sister Lan Yu Gusen for a long time. This was the first time I saw Lan Yu Gusen showing such a touching smile. In fact, even a person like Jason who was not tempted at all could not help but be stunned by her smile. But soon, Jason came back to his senses, smiled lightly, and said, I'm really sorry. If Senior Sister is willing to sell these materials to me, I will be very grateful. As for the use, I hope Senior Sister can respect everyone's privacy. This Jason, after hearing what Jason said, the disciples in the hall could not help but twitch their mouths, feeling frightened because Jason dared to reject Senior Sister Lan Yu Gusen. However, because of Lan Yu Gusen's inquiry, they also felt the purpose of Jason's purchase of materials. They became curious. What everyone didn't expect was that after Lan Yu Gusen was rejected by Jason, he didn't feel angry at all. Instead, he smiled indifferently, as bright as 100 flowers blooming in spring, and he was so charming. I have everything you need. Don't you know what you can exchange for it? Lan Yu Gusen waved his right hand, and 9 fist-sized cyan spiritual cores suddenly appeared on the stall in front of Jason, in the shape of a polygonal rhombus. Each one was crystal clear and bright, without a trace of impurities. A misty cyan halo emitted from the hall. In the middle of these spiritual cores was pure emerald green, and streams of strong wood spiritual power also emanated from the 9 wood spiritual cores, emitting surging energy. This Rao knew that as the number 1 core disciple, having an 8th level spiritual core was nothing special, but when he saw Lan Yu Gusen waving his hand, he suddenly took out after collecting 9 8th level wood spiritual cores. Jason still couldn't help but be surprised. What did this 8th level spiritual core represent? It represented an 8th level Emperor level spiritual beast. The owner of each 8th level spiritual core, it must be an 8th level Emperor level spiritual beast. It is extremely powerful. No 8th level Emperor level spiritual beast can be killed casually. Moreover, the 8th level spiritual beast has many spiritual core attributes, but what Jason wants is only the 8th level one. For with spiritual cores, the probability is even smaller. But it was taken out by Lan Yu Gusen all at once, which surprised Jason. How come senior sister Lan Yu Gusen has so many 8th order emperor level wood spiritual cores on her body? Isn't this incredible? Is she a wood spiritual master? No, even if she is a wood spiritual master, it's impossible to carry so many wood-type spiritual cores with you, right? Looking at the 9 8th level wood-type spiritual cores in front of him that exuded surging spiritual power and shone with dazzling light, Jason couldn't help but be surprised, but this wasn't because of the 9 8th level spiritual cores. He had seen too many such spiritual cores in his previous life. What surprised him was that Lan Yu Gusen actually carried so many wood spiritual cores with him. This was completely unreasonable. But when Jason set his eyes carefully on the 9 8th level wood spiritual cores, his body trembled involuntarily. At first, he did not look at the 9 8th level wood spiritual cores carefully, but only took a quick look. But when he looked again, he found that these 9 8th level wood spiritual cores, whether they were the size, shape, and texture are all exactly the same, and the difference is almost indistinguishable. And the quality is not the 8th level elementary wood-type spiritual core that Jason needs. All of them have reached the intermediate level. You must know that after killing different 8th level wood-type emperor level spirit beasts, although you will get 8th level wood-type spiritual cores, there are also huge differences between low-level and high-level wood spirit beasts in the same 8th level wood type. Differences, and slightly different attributes, will also lead to certain differences in the appearance of the spiritual core. Just like when Jason was preparing a 7th level bloodline awakening potion for Prince Tyria in the Silent Empire's Chi'er province, the spiritual core of the 8th level star flame tiger beast that Prince Tyria gave to Jason was, there are a few silver highlights like stars in the night sky, inlaid with the entire spiritual core, instead of the pure red color. It is precisely because of the unique type of star flame tiger beast. But the 9 8th level wood spiritual cores in front of him now are exactly the same in terms of size, shape, texture, and color. This shows that these 9 8th level wood spiritual cores, it was most likely obtained from the same type of 8th level emperor level spirit beast. The same 8th level emperor level wood spirit beast? Are you kidding me? When Jason thought about this possibility, he felt incredible in his heart. What does the 8th order emperor level spiritual beast represent? Although it cannot be said to be the pinnacle of the continent, it is definitely the top. Generally, there is only one in an area. For some special species, even if you search the entire continent, there may only be 2 or 3, just like the cloud swamp. The golden-horned giant beast and the sky-swallowing beast of the Tian-Ke Mountains are all special spirit beasts with unparalleled strength. Of course, there are also some 8th level spirit beasts, such as subdragon spirit beasts, which may also move in groups, but precisely because of their group nature, it is even more difficult to obtain the spiritual core of such spirit beasts. Ascend to heaven. How's it going? These are the 9 8th level wood spiritual cores you need. I wonder what you can exchange them for. Just when Jason was stunned, a voice exhaling like orchid spoke to Jason again. There was a ringing in his ears, waking Jason up. Opposite, Lan Yu Gusen looked at Jason with a smile, as if waiting for his answer. Jason thought for a moment, but said nothing. His eyes flickered twice, and with a wave of his left hand, 2 bottles of 7th level imperial elixir, a 7th level elixir material, and the sword of Taiwa suddenly appeared on the stall. Senior sister Lan Yu Gusen, I currently only have 3 million points. What I still have are these 2 bottles of 7th level imperial elixir, a 7 price material, and this earth level top grade Taiwa sword. Among them, 2 bottles of 7th level imperial elixir, 1 bottle with 2 million points. This material is worth 400,000. As for the Taiwa sword, because it is a top-grade Earth-level spiritual weapon, it is discounted by 5 million points. Jason counted all the things he could sell one by one, looking at Lan Yu Gusen with burning eyes. As for the 9 8th level wood spiritual cores of senior sister, because the quality has reached the 8th level intermediate level, they are discounted to 1 million each. 9 pieces equals 9 million, I don't know what senior sister wants. Jason looked at Lan Yuigusan, feeling a little uneasy in his heart. What he wanted to acquire at first was an 8th level elementary with spiritual core. It was about 700,000 points, but the quality of what Lan Yuigusan produced was far beyond the 8th level elementary level, reaching the 8th level intermediate level. If you want to build a 9 spirits chi gathering array, naturally the better the quality of the spirit cores and the stronger the similarity between the spirit cores, the better. The simple 9 spirits chi gathering array built by Jason at Halloween Mountain was made of 9 spirits chi gathering array. It is a spiritual core structure at the peak of the 8th level. 1 year of elixir growing in it is equal to 10 years in the outside world. As for the 9 spirits chi gathering formation in the death maze in the cloud mist swamp, it was even more terrifying. Jason even suspected that the 9 ninth order Holy Spirit cores might not be able to be activated, and the effect was unpredictable. Originally, Jason was just going to casually buy 9 8th level with spiritual cores. There were no such cores in the trading hall on the 2nd floor. He could also go to the core hall to redeem them with points. But now, Lan Yuigusan actually took out 9 of them that were so similar. The high-quality 8th level with spiritual core completely moved Jason's heart and filled him with desire. Different spiritual cores naturally have different effects on the 9 spirits chi gathering formation. Oh? 1 million, 9 million means 9 million? Lan Yuigusan looked at Jason with a half-smile, which made Jason's face heat up slightly. A single 8th level middle grade spirit cores can naturally be calculated in this way, but 9 of them are the same, but it cannot be estimated in this way. You also wrote on your stall that you want to acquire these things. I also have them here. Lan Yuigusan waved his right hand. Suddenly, Jason wrote on the stall, and some other materials needed to build the 9 spirits chi gathering formation were also written on it. And appeared on the stall. Why does senior sister Lan Yuigusan have everything on her body? Seeing these materials, the corner of Jason's mouth twitched again. Looking at Jason's expression, Lan Yuigusan curled his lips and said, "Look, I have everything you need, and the quality is extraordinary, but I won't talk about the thing you brought out. Well, 3 million points, 2 bottles of Emperor-level elixir are of some use to me, but a bare 7th level material? Are there any prescriptions and other materials for the 7th level Emperor elixir that require this kind of material? Finally, there is a high-grade earth-level spiritual weapon is of good quality, but unfortunately it is of the earth type. Do you think I, a non-earth spiritual master, would buy an earth-type spiritual weapon as a decoration?" Hearing Lan Yuigusan after saying that, no matter how calm Jason was, his face couldn't help but turn red. Jason also knew that it was difficult to get rid of what he took out. Although it was worth 12.4 million points, which seemed like a lot, it was messy and disorganized, just like handling goods, and it was difficult to impress others. But the quality of the materials produced by Lan Yuigusan was so pure that it was difficult for Jason to give up. Facing Lan Yuigusan's gaze, Jason thought for a moment before speaking out, "Senior sister Lan Yuigusan, I want all your materials, but these are the only things I have that can be sold. I don't know what senior sister is interested in. It doesn't matter if you don't like it, please tell me what you need, senior sister, and I will definitely try my best to meet senior sister's request." Jason spoke calmly, his voice was not loud, but he was firm and full of intensity. Of confidence. "Really? Very good, with your words, I am satisfied." Lan Yuigusan suddenly laughed, and took out the 2 bottles of Imperial elixir and the 7th level elixir that Jason took out after putting the materials in his bag. He said, "Remember, you owe me once." "What?" Jason couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. "What I mean is that these materials are all given to you, and the reward I receive is these 2 bottles of 7th level Imperial elixir, as well as this material. Of course, more importantly, you owe me one. If I have any request next time, you can't refuse. Of course, don't worry, I won't ask you for something you can't do." After saying that, Lan Yuigusan stopped paying attention to the astonished Jason, With a slight smile on his lips and a hint of cunning in his eyes, he stood up directly, left Jason's booth, and went straight out of the trading floor on the second floor, without giving Jason a chance to refute. This guy is so powerful. He used that little material to exchange for so many things from senior sister Lanyuigusan. Could it be that they have known each other for a long time? Who is this guy? Why doesn't this kind of exchange happen to me? Weird, there is something weird. After seeing Lanyuigusan leave, many disciples in the surrounding hall who were paying attention to the previous transaction suddenly made a subtle buzzing sound, and Azeroth and his ledger's face was so gloomy that he was almost dripping with water. Looking at the 9/8 level wood spiritual cores left in the stall, as well as the large pile of materials used to build the 9 spirits chi gathering formation, worth 2 million points, Jason waved his hand and shook off everything on the stall. After receiving it into the space ring, he ignored the many gazes around him and couldn't help but fall into deep thought. The other party used materials with more than 10 million points, but only took away something that he had less than 5 million points. Jason didn't think that this kind of pie-in-the-sky thing would fall on his head. It was the first time that he and Lanyuigusan met. They had never seen each other before, and it was impossible for them to be helped from acquaintances. But from Lanyuigusan's last words, Jason understood that it must be the other party sees something in him to do this. Is it because of my problem-solving in the core hall and the first-floor trading hall? Jason couldn't help but guess, but soon, he denied it in his mind. All he answered were some 7th-level elixir questions, and he himself was now a 7th-level intermediate imperial spiritual master. The topic of medicine can only attract some ordinary core disciples of the 7th level at most. If it can attract a genius like Lanyuigusan, who is number 1 on the elixir list, Jason doesn't believe it. Forget it, never mind. Jason, who had no clue in the end, shook his head and stopped thinking about it. Instead, in the eyes of everyone, he walked directly out of the second-floor trading hall without returning to the core hall, swept towards the direction of his residence, Huashan Island, in the turbulent spiritual sea. Now that everything is ready and all the materials are ready, Jason doesn't want to waste time and is ready to start building the 9 spirits chi gathering formation. As Jason flew by with all his strength, a majestic and overwhelming aura rushed towards his face in a short time, and the violent and churning spiritual energy of the riot spiritual sea appeared in front of Jason. Looking at the violent scene between the sea and the sky, the violent sea of spirits that is a nightmare for others, is full of intimacy for Jason. Without any pause, Jason dived into the range of the violent spiritual sea. In an instant, Jason felt that the spiritual elements around his body became extremely violent and could not be absorbed at all. While Jason was thinking about the next steps to build the 9 spirits chi gathering formation, he was also distracted by Lanyuigusan, whose body he couldn't get to the bottom of. Roar. Boom. At this moment, a shocking roar sounded between the world and the earth. Immediately, there was a huge roar and explosion. Along with this sound, there was another sound. Terrifying spiritual power fluctuations, and a shocking wave with a height of hundreds of meters, swept over and spread on the sea. The splashing waves instantly wet Jason's clothes. The terrifying coercion was transmitted overwhelmingly, causing Jason's body to tremble instinctively. In the sky, Jason's expression suddenly changed as he kept flying by. This is the location of the Island of Transformations. Jason looked at the direction where the shocking roars and explosions came from, his face filled with solemnity. He turned his left hand, and a transparent ball as big as a thumb suddenly appeared in his left hand. A trace of spiritual power slowly penetrated into the Kongming Pearl, and Jason's figure immediately blurred, as if he was wandering in 2 different spaces, his figure looming. Phew! Jason's whole body was suddenly close to the sea, and his figure turned into a blurry afterimage. He shuttled through the waves of the turbulent spiritual sea like lightning, and flew away like lightning in the direction of Huashan Island. What's going on? Could it be that my god Transformation Island was discovered by a terrifying spirit beast in this turbulent spirit sea? Impossible. If that's the case, it's impossible for the spirit beast to roar like this, and there's that explosion, what is going on? During the flyby, Jason kept thinking about the possibility of the distant roar, and his heart was filled with anxiety. This God Transformation Island is a mansion he finally found. It is located in the exchange center of violent spiritual energy in the turbulent spiritual sea. Under the transformation of the 5 elements transformation spirit array and the Jutian grand array, it can provide 10 times the spiritual energy for cultivation. If it is built again, a 9 spirits chi gathering formation will be an excellent place to cultivate elixir materials. If the God Transformation Island is destroyed, even if Jason is as calm as water, he will probably be extremely painful and depressed. Under Jason's rapid flyby, a moment later, Huashan Island appeared in front of Jason's eyes. However, thousands of meters away from Huashan Island, terrifying pressure was constantly coming, causing huge waves. Jason's pupils suddenly shrank after seeing the scene above the sea. I saw a man in a black robe floating in the air not far away over the sea, holding a black long sword and staring coldly ahead. This man was about 27 or 78 years old. He didn't look strong. He was covered in blood, and his robe was already torn. The strangest thing was that his hair was black and white, which gave people an inexplicable shock. Opposite him was a huge golden crab, more than 10 meters high. Each black thin leg was obviously very slender and powerful, and the 2 huge golden pincers were extremely sharp, with black lines all over it. Its pincers emit a cold light under the sunlight. Every piece of armor on this crab is dazzling with gold, and has thin black lines, full of a mysterious feeling. The most frightening thing is its pair of blood-colored eyes. Although they are not big, they are as cold as bright blood-red stars, and they exude a bloodthirsty light unscrupulously. However, the golden-armored crab beast was not having an easy time at this moment. There were cracks all over its body, and 2 of the 8 thin legs on the right were missing, making it look a little embarrassed. This is the 8th order Emperor-level golden-armored crab beast. Seeing the spiritual beast, Jason's body couldn't help but tremble, and his eyes revealed an extremely solemn light. The golden-armored crab beast, the 8th order Emperor-level gold-type spiritual beast, was the 8th order Emperor killed by Bina Balthazar. The green-patterned dragon is much more powerful. Although it cannot be compared with the 8th level peak spiritual beasts such as the golden-horned behemoth and the sky-swallowing beast, it is also an extremely powerful existence among the 8th level Emperor-level spiritual beasts. Ordinary 8th level dragons are much more powerful. No high-level Emperor spiritual master is his opponent. However, the entire armor of a normal golden-armored crab beast should be golden, but this golden-armored crab beast has strange black spiritual patterns all over its body, giving people a strange feeling. It was an extremely strange feeling. Jason flew slowly across the surface of the violent spirit sea and quietly came to the God Transformation Island. He hid behind a huge rock and looked at the people and beasts in the sky from a distance. The golden-armored crab beast is an 8th level Emperor-level spiritual beast. Shouldn't it be found in the depths of the riot spiritual sea? Why does it appear here? And the man in black seems to be from our core palace. Members, will we come to the violent spiritual sea and fight with the golden-armored crab beast? Feeling the terrifying spiritual power coming from the distance, Jason's heart was full of doubts. Because he encountered an attack by a 7th order Emperor-level spiritual beast during the first time, Jason also secretly inquired about this violent spiritual sea. Later, he learned that there were indeed spiritual beasts in this violent spiritual sea, and because of the violent spiritual energy of the spiritual sea, these spiritual beasts are all bloodthirsty and easy to kill ferocious beasts, but they usually appear in the depths of the violent spiritual sea. However, Huashan Island is located on the periphery of the violent spiritual sea, and is basically rarely encountered. To the spirit beast. Therefore, the appearance of this mysterious man and the 8th level Emperor-level spiritual beast, the golden-armored crab beast, filled Jason's mind with doubts. Roar. At this moment, the golden-armored crab beast moved again, letting out an extremely violent roar, dodging like lightning, waving its huge golden pincers, and the violent spiritual energy between heaven and earth suddenly exploded. He aimed at the man in black and slapped him hard. Boom! The golden secret text circulated on the claws of the golden-armored crab beast, and the golden spiritual power mixed with the black violent aura exploded. A huge gap was opened in the space, and the black space crack appeared, and it came like lightning, arriving in front of the man in black. At the same time, an extremely huge spiritual pressure was transmitted to Jason's body like a huge mountain. Even though he was so far away, Jason's heart was still beating like a war drum. Boom! Faced with the attack of the golden-armored crab beast, the long sword in the hand of the man in black suddenly moved, and black and white light flowed on it, blending with each other, exuding an astonishing terrifying aura. Swords and pincers clashed, and the entire sky shattered. The huge force impacted, and a huge pit appeared in the sea below. Then the waves rose into the sky again, and the huge waves swept some, and the water splashed suddenly. It exploded and scattered like bullets. Boom! One man and one beast fought in the shocking waves, sending out amazing roars and roars. Dual elements of light and darkness. Looking at the amazing battle in the sky, Jason's eyes suddenly burst out with a ray of light. The man in black had two completely opposite auras of light and dark at the same time, which made Jason endure. Don't be surprised. Different from the dual elements of water and fire, although the dual elements of water and fire are said to be mutually incompatible, it is only water overcoming fire. Moreover, both attributes are one of the 5 elements. The 5 elements are mutually reinforcing and interfering with each other, so it is not absolute. But even so, the entire continent is not. There are very few people with dual elements of water and fire. Because the conflict between the 2 attributes makes cultivation difficult, it is difficult to master the balance between the 2. The light system and the dark system are 2 completely incompatible attributes compared to the water system and the fire system. Any slight imbalance will lead to the collapse of the 2. If there are still some water and fire dual systems on this continent, the dual system of light and darkness is almost impossible to exist on this continent. Even Jason in his previous life had never heard of a spiritual master with dual elements of light and darkness, but the person in front of him clearly appeared in front of Jason, and he had also cultivated to the 8th level as an emperor spiritual master. Jason couldn't help but be surprised. No way. Just when Jason was thinking and surprised, the battle between the man in black and the golden-armored crab beast in the sky kept getting closer to the island of Huashan. In the sky, the man in black kept roaring sadly, blood was spilling on his body, his eyes were red, full of murderous intent. Kill, 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 I'm not willing to give in, I'm not willing to give in. Although the man in black and the golden-armored crab beast were evenly matched at first, as time went by and the spiritual power in his body was consumed, he was gradually at a disadvantage, and the onset of violent and murderous intent made his mind blurred and his combat effectiveness dropped significantly. Bang! The giant claws of the golden-armored crab beast hit him hard, and the young man in black spurted a mouthful of blood. His clothes were completely shattered, revealing his scarred body, and the sky was filled with black and white. His long hair was raging like a madman. Although he cut off 2 thin legs of the golden-armored crab beast with one sword, and even left a huge gap on the back of the golden-armored crab beast, but compared to his seriously injured body, the huge gap in terms of declining strength, the equally seriously injured golden-armored crab beast still has an absolute advantage. Roar! Feeling the opponent's weak body, the golden-armored crab beast's bloodthirsty eyes showed a trace of ferocity, and it roared triumphantly, and the golden giant claws fell again. Boom! The young man in black was shaken all over, his sternum was broken countless times by this blow, and his whole body was thrown heavily. Boom! Dash under the heavy blow of the golden-armored crab beast, the young man in black completely lost his resistance. He flew backwards like a cannonball and hit a building outside the Huashan Island not far away. On top of the mountain wall. Wow! Under the huge bombardment of the young man in black, the entire mountain wall completely collapsed and turned into countless rubbles. Ahem! Among the rocks, blood continued to spurt from the mouth of the man in black, and his blood-red eyes, full of bloodlust, now had a hint of clarity. He felt that almost all the bones in his body were broken, the power in his body was completely in chaos, his internal organs were broken, and blood foam continued to appear all over his body. He struggled to stand up, but found that he couldn't use any strength at all. He just felt that his life was passing away bit by bit. Roar! In the distance, the golden-armored crab beast roared again. The golden figure flew past like lightning. The giant pincers in his hands turned into a dazzling golden light and aimed at the man in black on Huashan Island. Attack! Are you going to die? The man in black felt bitter in his heart, with a trace of despair in his eyes. The man in black was named Cassinus. He was originally a disciple of a famous family on the mainland. He lived a life that countless people could only hope for since he was a child. But that night, a nightmare came and his family suffered a disaster. He was the only one. People escaped. Carrying the deep hatred of the entire family, Cassinus entered a desperate situation during the constant pursuit. He walked alone in the dangerous mountains for a whole year before he got rid of the enemies who were chasing him and finally escaped. He crossed the entire mountain range and came to a brand new place, hiding his name. He was only 13 years old that year. After escaping, he buried the blood feud deeply in his heart. He never told anyone that he wanted revenge, but the enemy was so powerful that he couldn't even imagine it. He kept working hard and traveled around the mainland. Finally, at the age of 20, he was spotted by the spiritual medicine master Pagoda with his amazing talent and became a disciple of the spiritual medicine master Pagoda. In 3 years, he worked even harder in the spiritual medicine master tower. In just 3 years, he went from an inner disciple to a core disciple admired by thousands of people and a member of the core hall. But he did not relax, because he knew that even if he became a core disciple, he would not be able to fight against the family's enemy. It was such a big thing, and with his strength, it was not enough. Over the years, he himself didn't know what kind of life he was living. He only knew that he kept practicing and practicing, just like a crazy demon, but he broke out his own path and became a master in the core hall of the spiritual medicine master tower. He is so famous that he is cultivated to the level of 8th level senior imperial spiritual master. But he knew it wasn't enough, but now, everything was coming to an end. The giant golden claws of the golden-armored crab beast grew bigger and bigger in his eyes, and boundless golden spiritual power filled him. Tears slipped quietly from Cassinus's eyes. Since he cried bitterly that night when the genocide was exterminated, he has never shed tears in the past 20 years, but now, he is crying. I'm sorry, father, I'm sorry, mother, I'm sorry, sister, I'm sorry, everyone. A sad smile appeared on the corner of Cassinus's mouth. I failed to avenge everyone, I am useless, I am really unwilling to accept it, I am unwilling to accept it. I hope I can still be your son in the next life. Wu Bian, the golden light, like a sharp blade, filled everything. Get out! Just when Cassinus felt like he was losing consciousness, a shocking roar suddenly sounded in his ears. This roar was like a thunderbolt, deafening, and then, there was the roar of a huge explosion. In Kazana's blurry vision, a figure descended from the sky like lightning, like a 5-color god, suddenly appeared in front of him, blocking the golden light that was about to destroy everything. Boom! 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 Deafening roars sounded one after another in this area. Cassinus's consciousness gradually blurred, his vision went dark, and he fainted completely. Before death, Cassinus C blocked the shocking blow, and the 5-colored god who appeared in front of Kazanus was none other than Jason. In front of the island of transformation, Jason stood proudly with a black heavy sword in his hand, his face solemn, and his robes were the same as before. That blow was completely shattered, and even the muscles all over the body were seriously injured, with many minor wounds appearing. This golden-armored crab beast is indeed an 8th order emperor-level spiritual beast, comparable to the 8th order, the terrifying spirit beasts that existed among the 8th level senior emperor spiritual masters were not comparable to, but surpassed the strength of the 8th level senior emperor spiritual masters. The green ball in Jason's mind rotated, and the rich wood vitality emitted, spreading to Jason's body, instantly healing the wounds from the previous blow. At first, Jason didn't want to get involved in the battle, but when the golden-armored crab beast struck Cassinus in the rock wall, Jason finally couldn't help but show up. First, although he did not know the young man in black, he could guess that the young man in black was also a core disciple of the core hall. They were all disciples of the same sect. Although Jason was not a good person, he is definitely not a vicious person who will not save anyone. Second, and most importantly, although the violent attack of the golden-armored violent crab beast was directed at the young man in black, what was the golden-armored violent crab beast? That is an 8th order emperor-level spiritual beast. If it hits that young man in black, let alone the young man in black, even the entire Transformation God Island will be completely shattered by this blow, sink. This is something Jason simply cannot tolerate. The Island of Transformations is a treasure he finally found, and no one, including spirit beasts, can destroy it. Roar. In the distance, the golden-armored crab beast was originally full of excitement, because it could finally kill the guy who offended him, but the appearance of Jason made it full of anger, and it let out an angry roar. Roaring, its blood-red bloodthirsty eyes fixed its gaze on Jason, exuding a violent and murderous aura. It had transferred all its hatred from Cassinus to Jason. Looking at the angry expression of the golden-armored crab beast, Jason's face was full of solemnity. He shook his left hand slightly, and a bottle of pale red elixir that exuded a magnificent light suddenly appeared in his left hand. The astonishing breath of the elixir dissipated. Without any hesitation, Jason opened the cork of the bottle of elixir and poured it into his mouth. Boom! As soon as this bottle of light red elixir was taken into the mouth, the terrifying spiritual power spread out from Jason's body. For a moment, a rich 5-element spiritual power soared into the sky like a rocket rising into the sky. The rich 5-element spiritual power unexpectedly, it seemed to have turned into a substantial colorful rainbow, standing like a pillar of heaven and earth. In an instant, Jason's strength increased by an unknown amount. Every time he moved his hands and feet, bursts of explosive sounds could be heard in the air. This bottle of spirit potion is one of the 3 bottles of Imperial Spirit Potion, specially prepared by Jason in order to fight Paltero. The first bottle of Spirit Potion had already been taken when he defeated Paltero, and what he is taking out now is the second bottle of 7th level Emperor level Eternal Potion. An astonishing aura rose into the sky from Jason's body. Jason's blood boiled with fighting spirit. Feeling the amazing power from Jason, the golden-armored crab beast went completely berserk. Black patterns continued to flow on its golden carapace, exuding terrifying pressure, and a golden elemental barrier spread out from its body. The terrifying aura fell on Jason like a mountain. Buzz. The golden ball in Jason's mind rotated, and the golden elemental barrier spread out, resisting the pressure of the opponent's breath. One man and one beast face off in the sky, evenly matched. Boom. The next moment, the golden-armored crab beast moved, and the golden giant claws were swung out. The violent spiritual energy in the world collapsed, and the golden divine rainbow flowed on the giant claws, tearing the space and hitting hard. Jason by. Jason remained motionless in the sky, 5-color spiritual energy flowing on his body. His eyes suddenly burst into light, and the black heavy sword in his hand was raised high, and then slashed down like lightning. A fatal blow. Feng Yen, San Shui Lang. The Fire Phoenix Nirvana. The spiritual power inside the body roared, and a ball of scorching flame suddenly burst out from the black épée in Jason's hand. This flame was like a sky fire from heaven or a will-o-wisp from hell. Wherever it reaches, all the spiritual power in the whole world is burning, and the void is collapsing, rippling out waves of flames, impacting the location of the golden-armored crab beast, and the golden attack of the golden-armored crab beast. The giant pincers collided together like thunder. Two astonishing and terrifying forces collided like meteorites in the sky. First, they condensed slightly due to the unparalleled squeeze, and then boom. The condensed energy expanded outwards and exploded, like thunder shining and mountains collapsing. A shocking explosion resounded throughout the world, and indescribable energy spewed out like a volcano. At this moment, the sky and the earth were twinned, the sun and the moon lost their brightness, everything around them lost their shape and color, the entire violent spiritual sea boiled, huge waves hundreds of meters high rose into the sky, and turned into the sky under the incomparable scorching energy. The fog filled everything. Roar. Not far away, the golden-armored crab beast roared in pain. Its giant golden claws, as hard as steel, were completely shattered. Flesh flew everywhere, and blood flowed wildly. In the terrifying flames below, the right side of the body is completely black. On the other side, Jason also retreated heavily in the huge explosion. Puffs of blood mist continued to erupt from his body, and cracks appeared, and then the wood-life vitality emitted from the cyan ball continued. Repair. Not far away, the golden-armored crab beast looked at Jason in horror. A trace of violence flashed in its bloodthirsty eyes, and then whoosh. It turned into a golden stream of light, trying to escape towards the depths of the violent spiritual sea. In the previous battle with Cassinus, although the golden-armored crab beast won, it had already been seriously injured and its combat power was less than half of its normal strength. Now Jason's power made it feel that its life was threatened. In the 5-element spirit transformation formation, the astonishing 5-element spiritual power was continuously exhaled, and the colorful spiritual power auras were tumbling, like clouds and waves, surging in the valley, and were then inhaled into Jason's body. With the support of this powerful force, the cyan ball in Jason's mind continued to rotate, and the astonishing wood-type life energy dissipated and traveled through Jason's meridians, muscles, and cells throughout his body. At this moment, Jason felt as if he was lying in a hot spring. The warm and gentle airflow lingered around him, nourishing his body, causing the cells and tissues of his body that had been damaged in the previous battle to disappear. It's healing quickly. Jason was a little tired from the battle, and his pale face gradually turned rosy. Not only did his face change, but his upper body was pale and had some minor wounds on his skin. It also continued to heal and began to glow with new vitality. Time passed bit by bit, and more than an hour later, Jason's closed eyes quietly opened, and a ray of light suddenly shot out from his eyes. Wow! Jason stood up. The colorful mist was disturbed and dispersed one after another. The space ring on his left hand flashed slightly, and a gray robe quietly appeared on Jason's left hand, wrapping his naked upper body. After more than an hour of training, the injuries in Jason's body were basically healed, and there was no trace of depression. If Jason, who had previously fought against the golden-armored crab beast, looked like a worker who had been doing heavy work for days and nights and had not rested for a long time, Jason now looks like he had a good night's sleep. Then after eating a full stomach, the young man took a hot bath, and his whole body exuded an aura of great energy. In just over an hour, after the battle, Jason restored his mental state to its peak state. If the other disciples in the core hall saw it, they would probably be amazed at the power of his recovery ability. Because Rudyard replaced them with Jason, I am afraid that they would not be able to return to such a state within 2 or 3 days, and these 2 or 3 days would probably still be under the condition of taking the elixir. Jason, who had recovered his condition, walked directly into his cave without hesitation and came to the room where Cassinus was. In the room, Cassinus was dressed in rags, his eyes were closed, his breath was weak, and his life force seemed extremely weak. The previous battle was the most powerful opponent Jason had ever encountered since he was reborn in this era. It gave Jason an immense amount of insight and understanding. If it weren't for the fact that he had to treat Cassinus, a matter of life and death, Jason would probably only those who can turn all the insights from this battle into their own gains in the valley can do anything else. In front of the stone bed, Jason's right hand rested on Cassinus's left hand, and then spiritual consciousness quietly seeped into Cassinus' body like soft ripples. This young man in black is extremely powerful. During the more than an hour that Jason has been practicing, the power within this young man in black is also healing this young man in black. Some of the damaged areas have been healed. It's trending. But this is useless. If it is a minor injury or an ordinary serious injury, Jason does not need treatment. The young man in fruit will recover on his own. However, the injuries suffered by the young man in black in the previous battle are really serious. It was too serious. If his own repairability was allowed to recover, he might have died before the injuries in his body could recover. Jason first used his spiritual sense to detect the young man in black, and carefully understood every injury in his body. For a spiritual medicine master, this is the most basic ability, but it is also something that many people tend to ignore. The place. In this world, there are countless strange symptoms. Many elixirs don't actually know how to treat diseases. What they know is just to treat diseases and prepare some comprehensive treatment medicines based on their own experience. In fact, this is unscientific. The first thing a true master of elixirs has to do is to see a doctor, find out the cause of the disease, identify the problem, and then treat the problem. Some diseases may seem serious, but they may only need some low-level elixirs to treat them. Of course, just using spiritual sense to detect is not enough. Some causes of disease are difficult to detect with spiritual sense. Therefore, the second step for spiritual medicine doctors to treat diseases is to use spiritual power. Under Jason's control, a subtle trace of the 5 elements spiritual power entered Cassinus' body along Jason's right hand. Huh? What kind of technique is this, and why does it have the power of swallowing? Just when Jason's spiritual power had just entered the opponent's body, Jason's face suddenly changed, revealing a look of extreme shock. In his perception, as soon as his 5 elements spiritual power entered the other party's body, it was like a small boat encountering a whirlpool on the sea. It was quickly swallowed into the other party's body and lost contact. Moreover, after this terrifying, devouring force swallowed up the power of the 5 elements, it even wanted to forcefully devour the spiritual power in Jason's body, like a black hole, wildly devouring everything it came into contact with. Light and darkness, the technique this guy practices is too weird, isn't it? If most people encountered such a thing, they would have cut off contact with the other party due to fright, but Jason did not. The spiritual god art in the body is running, and under the huge suction force, it controls the traces of the 5 elements of spiritual power, slowly entering the other party's body, and sensing the other party's skills. After a moment, Jason's spiritual god technique shook violently, and his right hand left the opponent's body. In the room, Jason stood for a moment, frowning, and finally walked out of the cave and flew towards the Sky City. On the square outside the core hall, a figure gathered and walked directly into the core hall. Jason, how are you? What did you gain from the treasure collection pavilion? Protector Mingxi greeted him with a smile. It had only been half a day since he brought Jason to the treasure collection pavilion. He didn't know that here, in less than 10 hours, Jason had returned to his mansion, and a big battle broke out. Guardian Mingxi, I need a preparation room. Jason said. Guardian Mingxi couldn't help but was stunned, and then smiled. No problem, I will help you apply for one now. Jason nodded, said no more, went straight to the trading area of the core hall, and then exchanged things. He exchanged things very quickly, and after a while, there were only less than 3 million points left in his token. It reached 500,000 yuan, and he exchanged materials for nearly 2.5 million yuan at one time. Jason, I have arranged the preparation room you want. At this time, Protector Mingxi came over. Well. Jason nodded to Protector Mingxi, and then ordered the staff of the core hall to send all the things he had exchanged to the preparation room ordered by Protector Mingxi. In the preparation room, looking at the experimental table, Jason exhaled a long breath after exchanging a lot of materials. This was a pile of extremely terrifying elixir materials, the worst of which were all 6th level materials. There were also a variety of 7th level materials, including even Qian has 2 kinds of 7th level elixir materials worth 600,000 points each, which are as precious as the cloud mist spirit fruit. Just these 2 7th level elixir materials cost Jason 1.2 million points, accounting for nearly half of the total points for all materials. After carefully feeling the injuries on the young man in black, Jason had already figured out how to use the sheath technique on the body of the young man in black. The young man in black was an 8th level Emperor spiritual master, but Jason did not prepare the 8th level Imperial elixir. First, he did not have enough points. Secondly, it was not necessary. For Jason, the 7th level Imperial elixir was completely sufficient. In the preparation room, feeling the tranquility of the preparation room, Jason's eyes were as firm as mountains, and then a brilliant light suddenly burst out from his eyes. After a moment, he moved his hands and started his own preparation with Jason's current 8th level peak physical strength and 7th level intermediate spiritual master level, whether it is using technology to flow spirit medicine or spiritual consciousness to flow spirit in medicine. It is no longer difficult for Jason to prepare a 7th level Imperial elixir. But considering the condition of the young man in black, Jason started preparing the medicine as quickly as possible. Although the other person's life was not in danger in a short period of time, treating him earlier would mean less analysis and grinding on the other person's body. An hour later, Jason walked out of the preparation room. The empty preparation room behind him was still filled with the terrifying scent of elixir, which was extremely rich. This is a unique appearance after the 7th level Imperial elixir is prepared. If it were on the outside continent, it would inevitably cause a sensation, but in the core hall of the Elixir Master Tower, it is completely normal. Jason, who prepared the healing potion, returned to the island of transformation without any pause, came to the stone bed, and took out 2 bottles of 7th level Imperial elixir from the space ring. One of the bottles is a completely white spiritual potion, and when it is taken out, it exudes terrifying light spiritual power fluctuations, while the other bottle is a green spiritual potion, with amazing vitality rippling out of it. There are many types of healing elixirs. Since this young man in black is a spiritual master of both light and dark systems, because the light system itself has the ability to heal, one of the 2 bottles of Imperial elixirs prepared by Jason is light-based healing potion. Jason first poured the white bottle of light elixir into the other person's mouth. As the liquid emitting dazzling white light slowly entered the other person's body, dazzling white lights suddenly appeared on the young man's body, and then without waiting for the first bottle of elixir to fully take effect, Jason poured the second bottle of green elixir into the mouth of the young man in black. Chi. 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 The voices of spiritual power dissolving sounded out. In Jason's eyes, traces of golden mist continued to rise from the body of the young man in black, and then in the white light. Under the illumination, it dissipated in the air. This was the golden spiritual power left in his body by the golden armored crab beast. At the same time, the body of the young man in black also healed at a speed visible to the naked eye under the effects of the 2 magical potions. Powerful and astonishing vitality emitted from the body of the young man in black. The pale, sickly complexion of the young man in black instantly became extremely rosy, and a powerful aura emanated from his body. Huh! Suddenly, on the stone bed, the eyes of the young man in black suddenly opened. 2 streams of light, one black and one white, flowed between his pupils, and the electricity emitted a terrifying light. Boom! The astonishing and terrifying aura of spiritual power dissipated. For a moment, Jason felt like he was in the center of a storm on the sea, swayed by wind and rain, and surrounded by dangers. Cassinus, who was lying on the stone bed, turned over and looked around with vigilant eyes. The terrifying spiritual power surged in his body, and murderous intent rose in his eyes. Crash! Terrible spiritual power spread across the room. The entire room built in the rock wall began to tremble under this force, and sand and dust continued to fall from the rock wall. Your Excellency, it seems that my mansion has no grudge against you, right? At this moment, an indifferent voice sounded in Cassinus's ears. Huh? Cassinus seemed to have discovered the difference in the surrounding environment at this time. His originally menacing expression was slightly startled, and his eyes fell on Jason not far away. Where is this place? Am I not seriously injured and almost dead? What about the golden-armored crab beast? Looking at everything around him, Cassinus couldn't help but be filled with doubts. He still remembered that he fought with the golden-armored crab beast, but the violent power in his body broke out, and then he lost, was seriously injured, and almost died in the golden-armored crab beast. In the palm of the crab beast's hand, the mind of the golden-armored crab beast was still recalling the tyrannical final blow. However, at that moment, by the way, I saw someone standing in front of me. Someone was at the critical moment. He saved me all the time. Could it be that I have no ghost? Cassinus' consciousness slowly recovered, and immediately, a trace of joy rose uncontrollably from the bottom of his heart and filled his whole body. Clenching his fists, Cassinus' eyes wandered around the room, and then landed on the stone bedside, on the 2 bottles of elixir Jason gave him. In an instant, he already understood what happened. Father, mother, sister, I'm not dead, have you seen it? A tear fell involuntarily from Cassinus's eyes. When despair comes, hope suddenly comes, and even Cassinus is ecstatic with surprise. On the side, Jason was stunned. Cassinus' cold appearance showed that he was extremely difficult to get along with and an extremely cold person. Moreover, his 8th-level senior Imperial Spiritual Master's strength also showed that the other party was in trouble. He has a high status in the core palace, but he never expected that such a person would shed tears of excitement when he learned that he was still alive. Little did he know that the reason Cassinus was so excited that he cried was not because he was still alive. For a person like him, who has an extremely strong will and is not afraid of death, it is extremely difficult for external objects to move his heart. What he was excited about was, there is still a chance for revenge. For him, revenge is everything in his life. In the room, Cassinus stopped crying in an instant. Immediately, he looked at Jason, with a hint of excitement in his eyes, and said with an unprecedented solemn expression, "Brother, my name is Cassinus, I am the leader of the core palace. Disciple, I, Cassinus, will definitely repay you for your life-saving grace." Seeing Cassinus' solemn expression, Jason smiled, "Brother Cassinus, don't worry too much." "No, you don't understand." Cassinus's expression was solemn, and there was still a hint of surprise in his eyes at this moment. "You don't know how desperate I was when the golden-armored crab beast dealt the final blow to me, but at that last moment, you appeared. If I, Cassinus, don't repay your life-saving grace, how can I feel at ease?" Cassinus recalled the colorful figure at the last moment before he fell into coma, and the earth-shattering sound of "Get out" is still shaking in my heart at this moment. Jason smiled. When he saved Cassinus, although he had the intention of saving him, he also did not want his mansion to be destroyed by the golden-armored crab beast. If you really want to say it, the second reason is even bigger. I'm so sorry, I don't know your name yet. Suddenly, Cassinus seemed to have thought of something and hurriedly spoke. "Brother Cassinus, my name is Jason." Jason? Cassinus had a doubt in his heart. He had been coming to the core hall for many years, but he had never heard this name before. "It's only been half a year since I joined the core hall." Jason smiled as if he knew what Cassinus was thinking. "That's it." Cassinus nodded. "Brother Jason, where are we now?" "You are in my mansion now. I have healed your injuries, but you are not completely healed yet. After recuperation, you cannot engage in intense fighting within 3 days, otherwise the old injury will easily relapse," Jason reminded. Cassinus had fought too fiercely with the golden-armored crab beast before, and suffered severe wounds on his body. Although the 2 bottles of 7th level Imperial elixir he prepared cured the opponent, it was not complete. If you are injured again, it will be troublesome, and it will not be easy to treat. I know. Cassinus nodded. With his strength, he could naturally feel the condition of his body clearly, but he couldn't rest. He looked at Jason and said firmly, "Brother Jason, I'm unconscious." "How long has it been?" "I have to go back to the riotous spirit sea to find the golden-armored crab beast. Now that it is injured, I must take this opportunity to kill it. Otherwise, once it recovers, I will kill it again next time. It will probably be much more difficult to kill it." He didn't know how long he had been unconscious, but from the traces of liquid remaining in the 2 potion bottles on the bedside, he could tell that the other party had rescued him with 2 bottles of 7th level Imperial elixir. The golden-armored crab beast, the injury he suffered was not light, but there was no magic potion to recover from it. He must be in poor condition now. Cassinus must take this opportunity to kill him, otherwise he would offend an 8th order Emperor-level spirit beast. An extremely horrific thing. Jason smiled and said, "Brother Cassinus, just take good care of your injuries. I have killed the golden-armored crab beast." "What, was it killed by you?" Cassinus said with a look on his face. Looking at Jason in disbelief. Jason didn't say anything. The space ring in his left hand lit up slightly, and the black and gold spiritual core of the golden-armored crab beast, exuding a terrifying spiritual power, appeared in Jason's left hand. Cassinus was completely stunned, looking like he had seen a ghost. He could tell at a glance that Jason in front of him was a 7th level intermediate Imperial spiritual master. In his heart, he was just thinking that Jason saved himself from the seriously injured golden crab beast and then escaped. If Jason's voice hadn't been exactly the same as the go he heard back then, he wouldn't have even believed that the black-haired young man in front of him had saved him. Jason smiled and did not explain Cassinus' surprise. He said, "Cassinus, this is my residence on Huashan Island. I have something to do. If you want to leave, just leave immediately. If you don't want to, you can rest here temporarily." After that, Jason turned and walked out of the room. He still had many things that he had not understood in the previous battle with the golden-armored crab beast, and he continued, "I have to be busy with the 9 spirits chi gathering formation down the road, so I don't have that much time to waste." Island of Gods? Cassinus was confused and followed Jason out of the room and into the valley. When he saw the scene around him, he suddenly froze. This is an empty valley, and the whole air is filled with a strong spiritual power aura, almost turning into mist, like mist, floating in the valley. What surprised him even more is that these spiritual power auras are all the pure 5-element spiritual power. Apart from that, there was no other spiritual power, which he, a spiritual master who practiced both light and dark systems, could not absorb at all. Whoosh! Cassinus rose into the sky and broke through the scope of the Jiutian formation. Suddenly, a salty smell of the sea came, and at the same time, terrifying and violent spiritual power suddenly filled the air. All around him. Isn't this the place where I fought with the golden-armored crab beast? This is a violent spiritual sea. Who is that black-haired young man? Why was his mansion assigned here? I thought I was the only core disciple in this violent sea of spirits, but I didn't expect that this young man was here too. In the sky, Cassinus looked shocked. He looked at Jason sitting cross-legged in the valley and starting to practice. His eyes couldn't help but show doubts. If he only had a life-saving grace for Jason in the beginning, if he had a good impression, then now, his heart was full of curiosity about Jason. The 1st-level intermediate Imperial spiritual master actually saved himself from the golden-armored crab beast, and even made him an 8th-level Emperor spiritual master. The golden-armored crab beast of the beast was killed. The most surprising thing is that his mansion is also in the violent spiritual sea, which is really hard to understand. Cassinus himself is in the violent spiritual sea because of his special skills. He specially applied for another residence in the core hall, but Cassinus didn't understand Jason. "This guy is really a god." Cassinus smiled slightly and said with his eyes, he could see at a glance that the pure five-element spiritual energy in the valley of Huashan Island seemed to have been transformed by some formation. However, in the countless years before, there had never been a disciple with such ability. How could Jason find such a good place? "The violent spiritual energy here is much richer than my Tianling Island." The rich and violent spiritual energy on Huashan Island made Casey Inusi was also delighted. In order to find a place with the strongest violent spiritual power, he specifically asked the core palace for an island located in the deepest part of the violent spiritual sea. However, he did not expect that on the outer island of Transformation God, the violent spiritual power would actually be there. So amazing. No matter. In the sky, Cassinus shook his head and looked towards the distant sky. "Father, mother, sister, and everyone, I, Cassinus, am still alive, and I will definitely avenge you." With his fists clenched, Cassinus' eyes full of determination, he landed on a beach on Huashan Island, sat cross-legged, and began to practice. In the valley of Huashan Island, Jason closed his eyes tightly, reflecting on the battle with the golden-armored crab beast. That battle was the strongest enemy Jason had ever encountered, and it gave Jason a huge inspiration. Every battle scene echoed in Jason's mind, and every application of the golden laws by the golden-armored crab beast, all of which made Jason think deeply. Drawing inferences from one example, Jason kept rehearsing in his mind, and the spiritual power in his body continued to operate under the control of the spiritual god art, turning into an indelible mark that was deeply imprinted in the depths of Jason's mind. The power of laws surged through Jason's body, and the five-color light flowed, revealing extremely obscure mysteries. Jason's sitting lasted for 2 whole days. At noon, the gentle sunshine shines through the violent spiritual power above the riot spirit sea and onto the valley of Huashan Island, bringing a meager warmth to the extremely cold weather in February. Under the sunshine, the colorful spiritual energy flows, rendering the entire valley into a fairyland. In the valley, a figure sits upright, motionless, like a rock that has existed since ancient times, standing on the land, firmly rooted, with huge and astonishing spiritual power flowing out of him, emitting astonishing waves. Coercion. I don't know how long it took, but a long breath came out of Jason's mouth, which had not moved for 2 days. A pair of eyes quietly opened, flashing with a terrifying light. Jason stood up, his robes shaking away the dust that settled on his body, his eyes shining like stars in the dark night sky. After 2 full days of enlightenment, Jason completely absorbed the essence of that battle and transformed it into his own knowledge and strength. Although his level has not changed, for the realm of the 7th level Senior Imperial Spiritual Master, Jason had a more profound understanding. His temperament became deeper, and there were inexplicable laws flowing in his movements. Now that everything is ready, it's time to build the 9 spirits chi gathering formation. Jason murmured. Suddenly, he seemed to sense something and looked outside the valley. He said in surprise, his figure flashed slightly, and he appeared outside the valley in an instant. Rumble. Outside the valley, the violent spiritual energy in the violent spiritual sea continued to surge, but Jason was completely unaware of it. He looked at a beach on Huashan Island, with a trace of inexplicable surprise in his eyes. There, Cassinus was quietly sitting cross-legged. Half of his body was emitting a deep black light, and the other half was emitting a dazzling white light. The 2 rays of light, one black and one white, merged in front of him, turning into making a huge millstone. It kept rotating, forming a huge whirlpool. The astonishing violent spiritual elements were like a torrent, constantly being swallowed into the vortex of yin and yang, and then being sucked into the body of Cassinus, and finally dissipated from everywhere in Cassinus. Among the violent spiritual elements that came out, there were no elements of light and dark. At this time, Cassinus is like a filter, constantly absorbing all the violent spiritual elements around him, then saving what he needs and expelling the excess. The most terrifying thing is his absorption method. The vortex of yin and yang is like a black hole. The spiritual elements absorbed every moment are extremely amazing. The torrent of elements visible to the naked eye even forms a surging river, flowing into it. Caught in the whirlpool, it was extremely terrifying. Feeling Jason's approach, the yin and yang vortex in front of Cassinus continued to shrink, and finally turned into a tiny particle and disappeared into the air. Cassinus, who had his eyes closed tightly, opened them, and an extremely ferocious aura escaped from his body. His pupils were red with a hint of red, filled with a violent red light. Huh. After a while, the red light in Cassinus's eyes gradually receded. He exhaled a long breath, stood up, and looked at Jason. "Brother Jason, are you done with your enlightenment?" Jason nodded, then frowned and said, "Cassinus, your practice method is very special, but why do you have to practice it in this violent spiritual sea? There is a special power in this violent sea of spirits. If absorbed for a long time, it will have a great impact on the human body, making people become murderous, violent, and more serious, they will lose their minds. Many people in this violent sea of spirits will have a great impact on the human body. The spiritual beasts were all affected by this aura and turned into bloodthirsty ferocious beasts. The first time Jason entered the riot spirit sea, he felt a unique factor in the aura of the riot spirit sea. If you stay here for a long time, it will have an impact on people's minds, making them irritable, and confused. If a strong-willed spiritual master can restrain himself from going crazy or being affected by such an environment for a long time, his character will definitely become extremely firm, and his skills will become even more refined under the rich spiritual energy. But like Cassinus, if he directly swallows all the violent elements into his body, he will be directly affected. The poisonous gas invading the body will lead to irreparable consequences. After hearing Jason's words, Cassinus couldn't help but reveal a bitter smile on his face. "Brother Jason, my technique is very special. Only in this violent spiritual sea can I fully display it. The speed of advancement. It's also several times faster than in ordinary places. As for the violent aura, you don't need to worry about it, I have my own sense of proportion." Although Cassinus said this, his heart was full of bitterness. He naturally knew the influence of these violent auras, and he could not completely eliminate it. When he fought the golden-armored crab beast, it was because of the outbreak of violent auras, causing his strength to decline, and he was almost killed in the end, but he had no way to resist the violent spirit sea. Here, his cultivation speed far exceeded that of the outside world. In order to take revenge, he completely abandoned everything, just to improve his strength as quickly as possible. Strength. Nowadays, many disciples in the core hall have their own goals. Like Jason, they are pursuing a stronger path and looking for the way of the god of medicine. Some disciples are doing it to shock the continent, and some are doing it to become a god of medicine. The next tower master of the alchemist tower became the overlord of the party, while Cassinus wanted revenge. He is willing to pay any price for revenge. Hearing what Cassinus said, Jason shook his head helplessly. Cassinus' words could deceive others, but they could not deceive him, a master of elixirs. However, he couldn't care less about other people's affairs, and he also discovered, Cassinus's technique is indeed suitable for practicing in the turbulent spiritual sea. At the very least, in the turbulent spiritual sea, even he can only absorb an extremely thin amount of spiritual energy, but this Cassinus can be so terrifying. The devouring ability, this alone is far beyond what ordinary spiritual masters can match. By the way, Jason, I have something unclear. The violent spiritual element of your transformation island is very rich, much richer than my Tianling island. If possible, I would like to add it to your transformation island. Of course, you can practice on the island of God. Don't worry, I won't enter your mansion. Seeing Jason turn around and want to leave, Cassinus immediately spoke up and looked at Jason with sincerity on his face. The reason why he practiced in the Riot Spirit Sea was because the concentration of violent spiritual elements in the Riot Spirit Sea was far higher than that in the outside world. He originally thought that his Tianling Island had the highest concentration of violent spiritual elements, but when he came to Jason's transformation after arriving at the God Island, he discovered that his Tianling Island was nothing compared to the Huashan Island. One day of practicing here was even as effective as 2 days of practicing on the Tianling Island, which fascinated him. Practice on my God Transformation Island? Jason couldn't help but ponder. Yes, and don't worry, without your consent, I, Cassinus, will not step into your mansion, which is the valley area where you set up the formation. And if any spiritual beast attacks, I will also help you. Resist, to put it simply, let me be your guardian of the God Transformation Island and protect the God Transformation Island for you. Cassinus even had a hint of pleading in his words. Of course, you don't have to agree, then I will do it now. Just leave. In fact, in the core hall, the weak prey on the strong, and the strong are respected. The core disciples are extremely cruel to each other. With Cassinus's identity and strength, he is also a lawless guy. If he is an ordinary disciple, Cassinus, not to mention pleading, as long as he takes a fancy to him, he can just slap people away and occupy other people's mansions. But Jason is his savior, giving him hope of revenge again. Cassinus may be cruel, may be domineering, but definitely not an ungrateful person. For a moment, Cassinus looked at Jason expectantly, feeling extremely uneasy. Okay. After pondering carefully for a moment, Jason finally nodded. You can practice on my God Transformation Island, or you can build your own room on the nearby rock wall, but there is one thing, without me with my consent, you cannot enter my mansion. Brother Jason, thank you so much. You rescued me from the golden armored crab beast, and even gave me the elixir to take, but you didn't mention anything. As a reward, you are now lending me a place to practice. I, Cassinus, am very grateful. If you need anything, just ask. As long as I, Cassinus, can do it, I will never refuse. Cassinus said very solemnly. He was really excited. Not only did Jason rescue him from the golden armored crab beast, but now he also lent him Transformation Island for training. With such an excellent where he was, his repair speed was at least twice as fast as before. Now he is one step closer to revenge. To be honest, if it weren't for the fact that he had a deep hatred to avenge, he would be willing to sacrifice his life to Jason now. Okay, remember your promise, I have something important to do now. No one is allowed to enter the valley without my permission. Jason said coldly to Cassinus, and then returned directly to the valley. Middle. Now, he was finally going to start building the 9 spirits chi gathering formation. Cassinus didn't say much, and directly found a secret place on Transformation Island, sat down cross-legged again, and started practicing. What Jason didn't know was that in the core hall, with the awakening of Gamma and Puskin, the news that his God Transformation Island had 10 times the concentration of spiritual energy from the outside world quickly spread among the core disciples. Jason, you crippled us and put us in confinement. I want you to have no place to stay. No matter how strong you are, a training holy land with 10 times the concentration of the outside world is not something you, a little newcomer, can have. Just wait. Just wait for those monsters in the core hall to trouble you, haha. In the treatment room of the core hall, Gamma and Puskin had just woken up from a coma for 3 days, with extremely resentful looks on their faces. They can already imagine the scene where Jason's God Transformation Island is about to be besieged by a large number of core disciples, and finally changes hands. This made them extremely excited.